Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. You see the stars of today's show, the Swiss Army revolver model 1878 and the so-called Swiss War of the Revolvers or Revolver War. Sorry to disappoint you, it's not a war with these revolvers, but it is a war about the introduction of this revolver. So it's not actually a history about combats, but it's the history about the introduction of this revolver. Let me introduce my sources first. This is the book Schweizer Militärrevolver, so Swiss Military Revolvers by Ernst Greinacher. I met Mr. Greinacher as he introduced this book to the public, and I have his permission to use parts of this book. It is 2 volumes. It is not exactly cheap, it's about 250 Swiss francs, so about $250, but it's worth every rappen or every cent. It's all about the revolvers. More knowledge does not exist. This is kind of the Bible. The second source is Häusler's Swiss Handguns. This at least has an English part for those who don't speak any German. There is a video about this revolver by Fires and May from CN Arsenal. I highly recommend watching this video. The link is in the info box below, and it's really worth watching. The Swiss were relatively late with the introduction of a revolver. You see, the first revolver introduced was the model 1872 and 10.4 or caliber 41 rimfire revolver, based on Charmelot-Delvin, and until 1872 a single-shot percussion pistol was the sidearm of the Swiss Army. Of course, there were other revolvers in existence. For instance, this one is called Ordonnanz, Eidgenössische Ordonnanz 1866, which is a Le Fouché revolver, so Le Fouché type, pinfire. And these were not officially service revolvers. The military department bought them, and the officers could buy them privately at their office, but it were never issued. And another revolver which was relatively common or well appreciated was a copy of the Colt revolver made by Valentin Zauberei, a gunsmith in Basel. And things like patents also did not exist in Switzerland at this time, so there was no patent protection. He could do so. The Swiss were not very happy with this Charmelot-Delvin rimfire revolver, and they tried to introduce a new one. And whenever you do something like this, you have a commission who has decided on this. And here you see the members of this commission, and 2 of them are in particular important, and I will introduce them in more detail. The first person we have to talk about is General Herzog, who is a very remarkable commander in Swiss history. He served as a colonel in the artillery department, and in 1871, during the Franco-Prussian War, there was the possibility that a French army corps, the so-called Bourbaki army, which was more or less cornered by the German forces, will force their way into Switzerland to escape the Germans. And even worse for Switzerland would have been if the Germans follow them also by force. And the Swiss had to somehow reinforce their borders, and the guy from the government persuaded or convinced, however you want it, the at this time Colonel Herzog to become the commander-in-chief of the Swiss forces. So he skipped the ranks of brigadier, divisionaire, corps commandant. So he came from actually no star, from a colonel, to 4-star in one jump. And he had 5 active divisions under his command, which were on the border, plus 4 more divisions on standby in reserve. And he could convince the commander and the others of the so-called Bourbaki army to surrender their guns at the border and go to internization. And Switzerland later received, I think, 15 million French francs for the accommodation and whatsoever for these French forces. So he could stabilize the whole situation, and he was only the second in modern Switzerland who was a supreme commander of the Swiss army. The first one, I think, was Dufour, but I'm not so sure. So, he was a very remarkable person, and after the war service he moved back into this office, which you can see here. Maybe not, yeah. There's artillery, Oberst, Colonels, Herzog, General. This is actually from 1873. So he moved back into his office doing the job as a colonel, despite being a 4-star general. And during his time in the artillery department, the Swiss artillery had some extreme changes. The cannons moved from bronze to steel, smoothbore to rifled, then from cannonballs, full metal cannonballs, to grenades, and then later on from black powder to smokeless powder. So incredible changes. I think the black powder transition was after his time, but the others, so from bronze to steel and the rifling, this was during his time. From the next person I do not have a picture to show. This is Rudolf Emanuel von Wurstenberger. He was Chef of Eidgenössische Kriegsmaterialverwaltung, so the guy dealing or being responsible for all the equipment, from the buttons of the trousers, shoes to cannons whatsoever. And during his time he also was for the introduction of the barrels with rifling in the artillery. So this was under, among other things, among his time in the Department Eidgenössische Kriegsmaterialverwaltung. And now about a guy which was not even invented to the party. This is at this time Major Schmidt, the head of the Eidgenössische Waffenfabrik Bern, so the head of the company which produces the small arms in Switzerland. Since 1867 he was chief Oberkontrolleur, so chief controller for small arms, and in 1896 he was tasked with converting about 56,000 small bore rifles and about 76,000 big bore rifles into modern systems. The system is Milbank Amsler, and he could do this to the full satisfaction of this department. The war between France and Prussia, remember 1871, showed that the Swiss army is not well equipped with modern firearms, and Schmidt predicted that the decentralized production of the Vetterli rifle will go awfully wrong, and he suggested a central company or central production place for the Vetterli rifle, which was not well liked by the guys who did the job so far. In 1871 the Eidgenössische Montierwerkstätte was founded with Major Schmidt as head, and this was not for fabrication, this was just for assembly. And then in 1875 the guys responsible saw that we get not ahead with the production of the Vetterli rifles, and that's why this Eidgenössische Waffenfabrik in Bern was built with Schmidt as head. You may see this stamp, which is CDS. This is a model 1872 Swiss Army revolver, and CDS means Charmelot de Wijn Schmidt. So he made some changes with the company producing this revolver, and certainly he was the most knowledgeable, but he was not part of this commission. So why was he excluded? And the reason is probably Colonel Wurstenberger, head of the Eidgenössische Kriegsmaterialverwaltung. Schmidt was an infantryman, and the development of new army systems, no matter whether it's small arms or cannons or so, usually is part of the artillery department. And these artillery guys, we saw Schmidt as an intruder, which had to be cut down to size. And also his idea of a centralized company for production of arms was not well liked by all the smaller companies which produced these weapons. All of them were either army officers by themselves or had good connections to the army. And with the change of the department, Wurstenberger took the chance and he degraded Schmidt. He was at this time Oberinspector, and he reduced his competences and he reduced also his salary. So apparently these two guys are not friends. One of the major disadvantages of the Army Model 72 was it does not have a rebounding hammer. So when you shoot, you hit, and you see then the hammer jumps back a little bit after it hit. And the Model 72 did not have it. And this is a problem for the cylinder to turn. And already in 73 tests started. And what you see here is a model which was presented from von Steiger. And this is from 1873, and you see it's already fourth variant. There are 6 or 7 variants of the von Steiger revolver. I cannot show you one in real, they are extremely rare. But there is a very nice video by Ian McCallum from ForgottenWeapons.com, and there he can present all the different models because he had them in the Kreuzlinger auction house of Werner Kessler. So this revolver has a so-called auto-eject, so it throws the shells out, the spent shells out of the revolver. And General Herzog was very much excited about this revolver and almost accepted it right away. And Schmidt was informed, so at the side, and he got completely upset about this, because this revolver is, if you see the video, then you know it is never useful as a military revolver. It's much too complicated to produce and extremely prone to malfunction. Just by the way, von Steiger was in Dutch service. He was, I think, Marine or Navy, something like this. He also spent some time in Brazil and some time in Africa. And in the 1870s, he took over a gun shop in Thun. And together with his chief designer Küchlin, he designed this series of von Steiger revolvers. So Schmidt and his chief designer Krauser saw their chance, and they did an adaptation of the old 1872 model, which you can see here. It interior looks like a typical Charmelot wine, and we made a conversion from rimfire to centerfire, and also a built-in option for an auto eject. We say if the commission likes the auto eject, then we do this. And actually later on, almost all 72 models were converted to centerfire, so the original rimfire are extremely hard to find. But this option of the auto inject was not built in. 1876 was a very important year in this Swiss War of the Revolvers, because Wurstenberger died and he was replaced with Lieutenant Colonel Grässli. Grässli, as a captain in 1870, developed a new production system for small arms ammunition. So this is for the revolver model 1872, which made this production of the ammunition much cheaper. Also, Grässli was an artilleryman, and you see this is a Swiss Army manual, shooting with guns, so we mean cannons, and the part about this barrels is from Grässli, at this time Stabshauptmann, so captain. He has also further developments. This is a Schlagerin, this is a kind of primer for mountain guns, and this is developed by Grässli. Here we see system Grässli. He was very young when he reached this position, because I found in the Schweizer Militärzeitschrift a short note about his retirement in 1903. So from 76 to 1903 he was head of this department, but he never made it above colonel, which was usual at this time. So getting a general's position was extremely rare, and I think this was only for field service, not for the guys in the offices. What happened as well in 1876 is that von Steiger closed his manufacturer or his company, and he tried to sell his machines or his equipment to the Eidgenössische Waffenfabrik. I do not know whether this worked out or not, but what happened to them. And then you see in blue Kriegsmaterialverwaltung, so the guy who is responsible for the equipment, chef is Kressli Colonel, and his assistant is von Steiger Alfred. So he was part of the department, and they are both, as you can see here, members of the Artillery Commission. Kressli Oberst, von Steiger Oberstleutnant. So if you thought Wurstenberger dead, von Steiger's company is closed. This is 1-0, 2-0 for Schmidt, but not quite. What also happened in 1876 is an article in the Schweizerische Militärzeitung, so in the Swiss Military Journal, and it's actually two articles, or this article has two parts. So one is 2 pages and the other one is 4 more pages. You can download this in the University Library of Zurich if you wish to do so. And there is no author signing for this, but it's clear that either Schmidt is the author, or at least has part, or is in part responsible for the authorship, because the von Steiger revolver is completely dismissed, or however you want to call it, and the von Schmidt revolver is the best what you can get on earth. And this was not very well liked by several persons. Not only because of this article, but partially because of this article in the Swiss Military Journal, Kressli and Schmidt were also not friends, more or less sworn enemies, which made each other's life hell. They met about 60 times in court. They wrote articles in newspapers about each other, partially true, partially not true, and what enemies do which don't like each other. At the end of the day, in all tests, the Warnant revolver was clearly better than the von Schmidt revolver, and that's why the von Warnant revolver, Schmidt actually suggested to have a loading gate there according to the Ebedi construction, but this was rejected by Kressli and by the Commission, and so the Warnant revolver was suggested to the Swiss federal government. After the Swiss government decided that they want to build this Warnant revolver, they asked a Belgish company, Schoenberg and Cadet, to produce this, and the price was 53 francs. And this seemed the government a little bit too expensive. That's why they asked Schmidt from the Waffenfabrik Bern whether he is able to produce this revolver. And he suggested 10 things to be changed. So he wanted, for instance, the Ebedi loading gate, a larger mainspring, an extension of the lever arm, a hammer stirrup, a different side plate. The barrel should be like the old Model 72 for easier production, and he wanted to have a slightly thicker frame. And Kressli was professional enough to see that some of Schmidt's suggestions really made sense, and the government then used Friedrich Vetterli, the designer of the Vetterli rifle, to judge about Schmidt's suggestion, and then they agreed that they do some changes. So we make the hammer spring a little bit different, the side plate a little bit different. They rejected the Ebedi loading gate and other things, and the price was then 43 francs, and this was decided in 1879. And The older Model 72 were converted to rimfire by the standards and then are called Model 1872/78. This was more or less the end of the so-called War of the Revolvers. Schmidt is the clear winner. In retrospective, he was right with everything he said and suggested, but maybe because of his personal way of doing so, he is not well received by other members. The other winner is the Swiss Army, which received a really nice revolver. And in the CN Arsenal video, we speculate that the revolver was in service in the Swiss Army until the 1920s. This is not correct. Actually, it served until the mid-40s, so 1942 and 43, something like this. But not on the hip of a proud cavalry officer, rather in the box of a veterinarian. This is Pferdeschlachtapparat, translated device to sacrifice horses, and this is what the veterinarian grabbed when a horse had to be sacrificed for whatever reason. So this revolver served in the Swiss Army until the mid-40s. So here you can see how many revolvers were used by one division, and it reads 269 revolvers for one division. The Swiss Army ordered about 4,000 of these revolvers, but they did not start with serial number 0. So the highest known number, I think, is somewhere 5,500 and something. Yeah? And there is also a civil version, if you want it like this, of these revolvers, which are made by SIG in Neuhausen, so not by Waffenfabrik Bern. Most of the ones are for the army are all done by Waffenfabrik Bern. Yeah? And it's not clear how many of them were produced by SIG in Neuhausen. Some numbers say up to 1,000, but they are so extremely rare. I never saw one except in a book. From the other revolvers I saw at least 5 or 6, but this is statistically not significant because there are only so few of these revolvers around. So I cannot tell how many really made by SIG Neuhausen. No one actually can. So now I have told you a little bit about the history of this Swiss revolver, and now let's have a look inside. So how to disassemble this revolver. For cleaning, it's very easy. You remove here the extractor rod. You put it upwards, and then this axis you can pull out. You can take out the cylinder, and that's basically this assembly for cleaning. You may disassemble it further without any tools, because you see I have here, now you don't see, but I have here a coin, 10 Rappen, and with this 10 Rappen coin you can actually unscrew this screw. It's a little bit cumbersome, that's why I take a screwdriver anyway, but in principle you do not need any tools for the disassembly of this revolver. See, this one cannot go away. You have to remove this screw in order to do so. Then simply remove this, and there you see you do not see it. I have to put it a little bit more in focus. And you see there is one thing. Lift this up, then you can remove the mainspring, like so. Remove this piece which handles the hand, then you can remove the hand, and then the trigger and the hammer, and that's basically all. There are no more parts. Actually, you can remove this one. There's also a screw that you can remove the extractor rod, but right now there is no need to do so. And for the reassembly, just in reverse order. Like all the Swiss arms at this time, we do have a serial number, and they also have a number in which order to disassemble them. Right. Let's put the forward hand in here. See, and that's basically all. So as compared to the Charmelot wine, this is much more easy. Oh, I forgot the clip. Much more easy to assemble and disassemble. Huh? So this should be enough for this video. In the next video I will tell you how to feed the beast. So how to make ammunition for these revolvers and what you can expect if you shoot one. They are very difficult to find outside Switzerland. As I told you, there are about 4,000 made only, as compared to the tens of thousands which were made from the model 82 or 29. So these are quite rare and probably very difficult to find outside Switzerland. This next video about the shooting I will probably broadcast in March or April, because right now in winter all the shooting ranges are closed and there is no way to shoot. So thank you very much for watching so far. I hope you find it at least kind of interesting, and see you sometime.